All right, all of you freedom-loving boys and girls, welcome to Mission Critical Podcast. If you are watching or listening to this podcast, you know, it's not just that you are the resistance. Honestly, you need to start becoming the rebellion, right? Let's just not dick around with things anymore. Like, shit's getting serious, shit's getting real. People are freaking out. So you have to be the resistance. If we have any chance of saving this country and saving and defending freedom, you got to step up. And this is the first step. Listening to this, you are the resistance. I'm one of your hosts, Mark. Your other host,
Redbeard.
And we have a very special guest on tonight, who's going to be the focus of tonight's podcast. And that kind of heavier intro. And I'm sorry, let me just do one little thing. We didn't do the normal intro music that we've been playing with because we're having just a little bit of a technical issue. Just see some of our other podcasts. We've put a link to that band. Go and give them some listens and give them some likes. I mean, it's great music, and they said we could use it for this podcast. That's just awesome. That's the spirit we need, is, people who want to get out there, share what they're creating, and share their ideas and their values with other people. So huge shout out to everybody over at Throom. Really appreciate it. We'll get you back in on the next podcast.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. But so on that note, let me introduce our guest. But before I do that, let me just talk about the thrust or the subject, the focus of this podcast, which is, I don't know what if I'm going to title it, be prepared, get ready, stand tall. It'll be something along those lines. And full disclosure, so I personally know the gentleman that's joining us here tonight. He's been on, I think, only one other podcast. I'm going to let him introduce himself and say what he wants about his background. But he's out there still carrying the water and doing the heavy lifting. So, and we're going to talk about, again, issues that you need to start thinking about in order to help better prepare yourself, both physically, capabilities wise, or mentally, right? That's going to be kind of the focus of tonight. Redbeard, did I kind of cover that? That kind of encapsulates.
Yeah, I think you did a good job. So.
All right. So let's bring him on. He doesn't really need an introduction, but he's going to have to because he hasn't been on a while. Triple X. That's his nom de guerre, or nom de plume, or nom de fume, or something, Hey, why don't you say hello to everybody, share whatever you're willing to share, and then we'll jump into the heart of the matter here tonight, sir.
Good evening, everyone.
Or morning, depending on where you are.
Good morning. I'm about 9 hours ahead of where Mark and Redbeard are. My background is military, United States Navy, law enforcement. I was able to work with Mark for a while, and I've been instructing for that OGA portion and other places. And right now I'm in the Middle East as a instructor, teaching some great men and women who are doing great things for the United States.
Hey, can you give any further detail on what type of instruction? Whether, again, and folks, if it's classified, George knows what the deal is. We're not classified stuff. So
I teach all the firearms, protective operations, sniper operations, and driving, and a lot of hard skills to men and women.
Yeah. Sweet.
So very cool. You see the ticker going by underneath. So George has spent an extensive portion of his life learning what is called, kind of colloquially in that world, hard skills, right? They're soft skills, they're hard skills. Hard skills are those action-oriented, results-oriented, skills that are kind of designed to save your life and bring smoke upon the bad guy. So George is out there and he's been doing that. Shit, can we say this? I don't know if I can say it. You could probably say it. When did we first meet?
You and I met
that little thing right there.
In 2008 is when you and I met.
Yeah, so we met each other in a great part of the world, and and George did his best to keep me from being too ridiculous during our posting. But I don't know if he did his best or I did mine. But hey, jumping right into it, we got about an hour. That's the format when we're bringing on an individual guest. That's what we're shooting for. George is, again, as he already said, he's in another part of the world. Woke his tired little, and I'm here to tell you, I got some stuff for you later in this. I'm going to get back at you a little bit. When you were fucking with me when I was getting that 4 hours of sleep. But George is, but serious, huge applaud and huge, hats off to George, just sucking it up just so he could be here on this podcast and share his background and his experiences and some of his thought process with whoever, the men and women who watch or listen to this video. So, and hopefully, again, and as Jeremy and I always try to accomplish, hopefully there's at least one little nugget for one person out there that makes it worth doing. So on that note, let's kind of jump right into it. No mad minute here tonight, Redbeard. Let's just kind of get right into it. So
100%.
So I'll kind of kick this off and then turn this over to George to help paint the picture of what we're going to talk about and why it's important. So George, in today's day and age, and I don't want to, I don't want to bring up any specific current events because I don't want to make it seem like I'm trying to profit off of or otherwise, pull a KJP and slander, the brave men and women in uniform. But the world isn't getting any better. There's all types of activity taking place in a multitude of locations. And then here at the home front, crime hasn't subsided. You can make an argument that there's even more unrest and violence and et cetera, going on in our world, both whether that's in your local area, your state, your country, or the world writ large. And all of these have the potential to have very serious ramifications, negative ramifications for us, the end users. So painting that kind of picture, and we're doing the broad strokes, and then we'll come down into right now we're at that 600-mile view. We'll bring it down to the local level here in a second. But George, from that broader perspective, I've been out of the fight for a long time now, as you well know. Can you add a little bit to that, or give us your opinion on what or how you view the world based on what it is that you're doing and where you're going and the people you're interacting with? Or again, I'm not asking you to stray outside of anything that would get you in any type of trouble, but can you add a little nuance to that and just kind of set the stage for why we're even having this conversation tonight?
Well, I think when you look at things, and even though you're able to see a lot on social media, unfortunately, you see from where we're at now, there's a lot of testing of what's going on in our part of the world where you guys are at, of, hey, it's kind of like a free-for-all. And I think right now we are being tested to see what our reaction is going to be to a lot of stuff. I mean, unfortunately, what happened the other day, and then seeing the reaction from, I would say, our government. And I don't know if you guys watched the press secretary as she was trying to give her, condolences to the soldiers. Or
that
whatever.
was an abomination. That was an abomination.
To me, when you can't even say our brave men and women, and you just keep on trying to beat around the bush. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen the interview or not from the general who basically said what happened, but their drone followed our drone back to base and tailed it. So our personnel at that base were only tracking one drone, and it was our drone coming back. It was way too late by the time it even entered the AO. By the time that one hit the strike, no one even knew. That's why no one saw it on radar. So obviously the intelligence that we're getting is, Iran is behind it, but they're training guys in Syria how to do it.
All right. So
go ahead.
Sorry, give me 1 second here. I'm trying to set you up with something to that note, just in case people here. Let me bring it back to this view, just in case people don't know what George is just talking about. And I'm doing this on the fly right now. I apologize. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to share something, and I haven't seen this whole clip, but I already know I kind of got it set up, and I'll be able to end it. But if people don't know what George is talking about, here's what just happened.
Our deepest, obviously, our deepest condolences go out, and our heartfelt condolences go out to the families who lost three brave three folks who are military folks, who are brave, who are always fighting, who are fighting on behalf and of this administration, of the American people.
Right there. I mean, that's just bizarre right there.
Yeah,
And
I mean, it's hard to get the words out. Brave Americans. I mean, that's, to me, I don't understand that, but maybe that's
well,
just
and
me.
then, yeah, well, and then her first comment wasn't about people who were serving their country. And I know Jeremy's gonna have some things, because I've got some heartfelt, emotional things to say about that comment. But then to say, who died for this administration. I mean, I hate to say this, she should immediately resign. Or, if this administration, any administration, I don't care if it's Democrat or Republican, if your press secretary went out there and did that word salad bullshit and made such an embarrassment, that person would have been fired. If I was king, if I was the El Presidente, you would have been fired right then and there. Like, never again. As long as I'm the president, or whatever happens afterwards, I will do everything in my power to make sure you're never in a position of any part of the government ever again. That was such an abomination. And I'm sorry to have interjected that, but maybe somebody didn't know what we were talking about and why. I personally am a little bit fired up, and I know this is going to segue into some stuff Jeremy wants to talk about, but right there, Triple X, to your point, you use the word free for all. I always just keep thinking of, like, we're turning into Mad effing Max, like from one of the movies. And so therefore, more and more recently, your ability to actually be mentally fit, physically fit, and family or societally fit, and that I'm kind of setting something up there I think George might talk about. I think now more than ever, that's incredibly important, right? And that was just one example right there. It's just, because we've got people in leadership who they shouldn't even be in power. I mean, so when that starts breaking down, what do you think is going to happen next? Well, George, how about that? And then we'll go over to Redbeard. What do you think is going to happen next? On the domestic side or the international, or all of the above, wherever you want to go, sir.
I mean, I hate saying things to make people paranoid or whatever. I just look at what we're doing at our border. I know some people get really butthurt about that, but if you're looking at any news or anything that's happening, it's sad, because if you watch what truly is happening at the border, one day you watch CNN and they drive literally a half-mile spot that has barbed wire, everything. They're saying there's no way people are getting into the country, but then they stop. You see other news organizations who are like, hey, watch these guys. And they're coming across like crazy. Then you watch the federal government trying to tell Texas what they're not allowed to do and what they are allowed to do to protect their own state. And then order Border Patrol to go basically pick people up and bring them across into Texas. It literally is maddening that we're allowing this to happen. And the people that are coming across, I mean, I understand, hey, you don't like where you're at or your country shit and you're going looking for the American dream, but there's a lot of bad people coming across and nothing's happening. And it's always convenient of the timing when stuff like this happens. And right now, if you look at a lot of things, certain states are being told, hey, it's okay to go ahead and give them an ID as soon as they show up. You don't need to know their name or anything else like that. We just need to give them the right to vote, or give them this or give them that. It's a slap in the face to the American people who buckle down every day and pay their taxes, do the right thing. It's just pisses off a lot of people. Unfortunately, I think when people get angry, they kind of lose focus. And this is for anybody that, hey, when you get angry, I always used to wear that patch, my fun meter's pegged, because sometimes there was a lot of stupid shit that would happen. And, if you don't stay focused and look at what you're there to protect and, do and raise, I think that's where a lot of the weakness might end up coming to our country is if we take the people with the backbones of that thought process and kind of wash it away because they get so angry, and next thing you know, then you just have chaos all over.
So there it is. I mean, so the words from a man who's still out there doing some heavy lifting, and he's talking about, hey, you know, a guy who's out there doing stuff. I haven't done this. I've been out of that fight since about 2012, right? So, well, maybe anyway, but we're just trying to think, because I did have to go back in the military for a couple of years and unscrew that whole situation. But I mean, you know, whatever, National Guard. I mean, I suppose we could have been deployed, but you know, but to George, to your point, you know, as when I did that, and just a little point of personal, I guess, privilege here, because I think it adds what you're saying. And then this can segue into Jeremy. So I'm a company commander in an infantry. I was the heavy weapons company commander in an infantry battalion. Yeah, it's the National Guard, but I made sure to include so many elements in my, you know, everybody thinks of weekends, you know, oh, you guys train 1 week in a month. But I included so many like force protection and counterterrorism and you know, like those threat type of metrics. And I have my guys doing all kinds of stuff because this is the, you know, and then we interacted with a lot of our civilian counterparts, sheriff's department, EMS, you know, because there's so much more to this than just the kinetic and the war fighting side.
Yeah.
And I like what you just said, because that's what kind of brought my brain is like, we need people who are thinking like, hey, this can still happen here in my backyard. This can happen in my community. This can happen in my state. You know, just because we, you know, bin Laden, you know, has been, you know, has stopped breathing, that doesn't mean the threat has gone away, if that makes sense. So on that note, Jeremy, I don't know. And well, Triple X, with your permission. And so can we go into start going into some of the more specific type of questions now?
Yeah, let's go.
Makes sense. All right. So again, I'm just trying to paint the picture. Well, why do we want to talk about some specifics? Why is this important? Well, because this stuff is still here in America, and you could make a pretty solid argument that it's about to get real again, you know, and maybe, and I hope I'm wrong, but maybe even on a completely different scale. I mean, see that video of the guy coming across saying, well, you don't know who I am, but you're going to know who I am soon, right? So terrorism hasn't gone away. We still have a bunch of crazy people out there. Oh, you can make an argument. We've got even more crazy people in our country who are quote unquote citizens. So Redbeard, where do you want to go with that? What do you got for Triple X here? And make sure, you know, he's old and tired. So you got to, you know, keep it spicy. So
wow. Just pouring it on thick tonight, aren't you? Holy crap.
Let him get his jabs in.
I might have a few scores to settle with the Triple X, you know. I'm in charge of this, you know, scenario or the setup here. So
I do want to start real quick in talking about and Mark's probably heard me make this comparison before, but I want to just remark real quick on the KJP little talking points thing. You know, it would, if we're going to have people that are kind of you know, without any type of actual empathy or a heart or something like that, you know, can we at least get the old school politician who, when they lied, they sound convincing and they could actually articulate what it is they're saying? It's in I've made the comparison to criminals. Can we get the John Dillingers back to where they dressed up nice and they, you know, when they came in, like they were the type of person that was publicized and had the public support? I mean, what happened to the old guard of people that, like, you didn't like them, but you were also kind of in awe because at the same time, it's like you're just like, all right, well, they could speak really well. And even though that they're a terrible person, you know, darn, do they look good doing it, you know? Like, what happened to those days? You know, if there's not a significant metric for the decline of the United States other than that, I would say that's a pretty good decline when even the worst of us really are not that good at being the worst of us anymore. There used to be some class and some pizzazz to it. I know that sounds messed up, but it's like, if you're going to lie to me, dude, at least speak like proper sentences and make it sound good, you know, if you're going to be a douchebag. But I digress. I have a couple
I thought
things.
that was the question. I was waiting for Triple X's response there. I know he's got something to say about
Hey,
what you.
To be fair,
mentioned.
if you want to respond to that quick, I'd love to hear what your point is on that.
I mean, I think in all, I take this back to just look at sports.
Yeah,
Prime example. You look at college basketball coaches. Forever
Yeah.
in the day, it was always a suit and tie. They would even complain about it. The older guys, Dean Smith, um, and the reason why they would sit there and say, "Hey, yeah, it's hot, is it uncomfortable?" But
Mhm.
it shows a level of respect between myself and the ball player. It
Yeah.
shows that, hey, yeah, I'm the guy who's out here wearing this. I'm in charge, and not in a way that it's disrespectful to the players, but
Mhm.
it's getting them ready for the next level of either playing the NBA. And we all know that that was a small percentage of personnel
Right.
where, hey, if you showed your coach the respect and you learned to earn that respect
Yeah.
from him on both sides, how are you going to be when you entered the world, the real world?
Yeah.
And I think then finally, you look at that the same thing in pro sports. It was like that. And then all of a sudden,
Right.
everybody's like, well, why do we have to respect each other? Seeing that in the workplace, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I look at places where they have mandatory nap rooms when you're at work, and I sit
Oh,
here and
good
go,
Lord.
okay, you're giving somebody an hour nap on top of an hour lunch.
Oh,
What are you doing for your production?
yeah.
How are you earning money? What are we showing everybody? And I think that once we became so flexible, there's no structure. And I think
Right.
that's where you're watching everyone start to follow that. And
Yeah.
hell, I mean, once you see that and once it starts, then you look at our politicians and you look at our leaders, they sit there and give you bullshit because
Yeah.
they're getting, their pockets are getting lined. And the good politicians that come in that want to be like, hey, go fuck yourself,
Yeah.
they end up getting screwed. So
Right.
they want the money, so they end up folding.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Um, I actually really enjoyed because I didn't know what your response was going to be, but yeah, no, I enjoyed that. Even though that that was far away from the original question, but I
But
do have
just to add to your guys' point, though, I thought that
yeah
was actually a good point, Jeremy, and that's why I wanted to let Triple X,
yeah
because for anyone listening, look, it's just one more indicator that the system, right? Our normalcy, our civilization is falling apart. It's
yeah
collapsing and it's eroding, right? It's just one more thing. So again, that's the dots on
yeah
the wall, I call it, where each and every one of us should be able to look out there and say, wow, there's no more decorum. There's no more professionalism.
right
There's no more courtesy. There's no more men looking
right
out for women and being polite and taking your hat off or standing up when
yeah
somebody enters the room. That civility that has been beaten out of us. And as a result of that, going all the way back to what Triple X said at the beginning and why we're bringing him on, is so that means it's the wild, wild west. It's Mad Frickin' Max. And it's turning into that. So all the more reason you better start keeping your head on straight, and you better, again,
yeah
mental acuity, mental fitness, physical fitness, and
yep
skill fitness. Maybe
hmm
fitness isn't the right way of saying it, but you really need to be taking the stuff in earnest nowadays,
right
because it is. That is just another example of everything that, well, God, if I could pull up the whole quote, but the decayed and degrade state of moral affairs, to quote Teddy Roosevelt. So, all right, Redbeard, back to you with your
yeah.
questions.
So I guess my questions are going to be kind of more along the the civilian or the average person training side, which is, you know, when you look at all of the different content that's out there that of guys who really try to provide some type of a direction for the average person, whether it's a guy or a gal, and you look at different gear and you look at all these different considerations. There was a discussion that I had with a few people quite a while back, and they said, a lot of guys want to they want to learn more, military style stuff, which is great. But in the end of the day, you also have to be cognizant of what your, I guess, quote unquote, operating environment is going to be. And that's very different for us in our own home, in our own state, and everything associated with that, than it is like being in an actual like large scale military environment. And with that being said, what is your opinion, or what is your I guess, how do you perceive that or look at that? And then also, what do you think people should be proactively evaluating in terms of gear and some firearm training aspects as well? So
Well, I'd say first of all, sharpening your mind, and the reason why I say that is know where you live, know your laws, and if you live in a spot that you feel that either your county or your state is going to look at you as being the enemy, i.e., hey, somebody breaks into my house, they're trying to hurt my wife, and I shoot them, and then we find out this person is an illegal alien or somebody that might, hey, this is going to hurt somebody's feelings that I harmed somebody because I was protecting my family. That's not a place I want to live. It's not a place that, it always used to be, hey, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. But now it's like, what 12? And is my state going to really scrutinize me protecting my family? Those are little things that you need to set yourself up to understand. I think when you
Can you just a quick pause right there?
Yeah.
Because I mean, if anyone thinks that right now the conversation's drifting into bullshit, just look at recent events. There's already been, like, I can think of, and I don't know the names of every person, but within the last 6 months, there's at least 3, if not 4, examples of a citizen, to what you just said, George, who was defending himself, other citizens, other innocent people, his family, and now they're the ones who are being scrutinized. Heck, the most recent thing doesn't quite fall in that category, but those guys who are out there, like, they're like pedo hunters, right? They're out there doing their own stuff. They're doing their own investigative, and I'm going to screw this up, so I'm not going to say what state it is, but the state police response was, well, and they presented all their evidence. Here's all their files. Here's all the conversations, the text messages, the emails. And that state police said, like, well, you know what?
It was like Maine or Maryland, I think.
Well,
one of the two.
I'm not 100% sure. But so on that note, though, I mean, it goes to what George just said. So you've got to figure out where you live, and then, and not to derail that, but, George, and at that point, if you're living in, behind enemy lines, if at all possible, you might want to try to get out or solidify your own little community or area, and be that bulk.
Maine. So it was Maine.
Was it Maine? Okay.
It was Maine.
Yep. All right. So, all right. Sorry, George, but I just thought that was a great point, because if somebody's like, oh, that's nonsense, really, it's happening around us every effing day. All right. Continue, sir. Sorry.
You're good. But I think if you can educate yourself and understand things like that, and then if you're going to take the next step of, hey, I want to be a gun owner, hey, get good training, and when I say good training, everyone knows if you're in the military, you're supposed to get a lot of training. If you're law enforcement, you should get a minimum of 40 hours of firearms training. And we know for a lot of police officers, hell, they might need a lot more than that. I can personally talk about that because there were many officers that I trained that would barely make a 70% on a shoot for a qualification, because if they shot below that, they would have to go to remedial. And I'd have to sit there and watch them shoot 8 or 9 times just to get a 70. So their department can go, okay, they're good. I'm like, no, that's a fucking disgrace. I hear civilians go around because they're like, oh, cops, the only thing they want to do is shoot people. Well, no, not really. You look at a lot, and I mean a lot of videos of where people, when I say people, for whatever reason, mental illness has taken a friggin' flight like the shuttle to outer space of people wanting to challenge law enforcement officers with knives, chase them, do whatever, they get shot, and then everybody goes, oh, well, why did they shoot them 4 or 5 times? Well, people do funny things when they get shot. You know why? Because it fucking hurts. You shoot somebody one time and they're coming at you and they flail and they do whatever, or they're being defensive and throwing their hands up. Police officers don't get that type of training. Hell, even our military doesn't even get that kind of training.
Yeah.
There's people I train now that only shoot one time, and I'm like, okay, hey, guess what? Unless you freaking shot them in the tee box in the fucking head, they're still going to move because those small little 5.56 rounds don't do a lot of damage to people. They hurt. They're like bee stings. You got to stay on your target. You got to stop that threat. You're here to protect people. We're not here to run and chase people. I think people need to extremely educate themselves when they get that firearm, because if you don't look at the ramifications of, hey, how much responsibility is it for me to carry this weapon? Sometimes that scares people. Other times people are willing to accept that responsibility and go, hey, look, this is what I'm going to do. In the context of what you're going to do. Just because you're carrying a gun, you shouldn't be going to look for a fight. But if the fight comes to you, you should be physically and mentally prepared to go ahead and finish that fight to protect the people that you're trying to protect. Like I always tell my wife, I'm always the AIC, the agent in charge. If her and I are out and about, guess what? I'm the dude looking for stuff. And some of the mindset classes that I give, I catch some wives off, like way off guard when I tell them I hate it when my wife calls me by my name. And women will be like, what the hell are you talking about? And even some of the guys are like that. And I take this all the way back to my kid. If my wife calls me by my name, two things have happened. Either one, I really fucked up, or two, she has seen something that I have not seen, and she's like, you need to pay attention. It's the same thing with her. I never call her by her name unless her and I are together and she's talking, and I go, hey, babe. And I have to say her name. She's like, well, I was like that with my daughter, too. I never called my daughter by her first name and middle name unless I was pissed with her. But I would always tell her, hey, if something's going on and I only say your middle name, you better damn well know you get close to me or you hit the ground as fast as you can, because that means something bad's happening. These are just little things that you can kind of help train your family and get that mental preparedness of, hey, yeah, I know what I'm going to do. Maybe you're not as trained as well as I am, and I haven't brought you to that point, but I've got to do something to take my mind off of what I'm protecting to protect. These are things that I talk about with a lot of people I train on getting this ready, because it's all a mindset. A lot of people have that fixed mindset of, hey, there's only this, or you have that growth mindset that you can go, hey, I'm in a bad situation, but how am I going to get out of it? Versus, oh shit, the world's getting ready to end. Well, you know what? I don't see God yet. So it's not ending, and I need to do this so I can still remain and do my job and be part of the human race.
Right. Yeah, I like that.
I kind of want to just add one thing, or not add, but just to maybe get you to expound upon a little bit more. It sounds, I think it may have been lost in the weeds, so to speak, just even what you were just talking about. Some people may not have picked that up. Like, is he talking about like not calling my wife by my name? No, you're talking about having a plan and discussing it and rehearsing it with family members, because, what are you going to do? You could say, out loud, oh shit, look out for that guy. I mean, that's a technique, right? It is, but it's going to be alerting, and maybe there's a time where it is like, there is a guy with a knife and there's no time for subtleties. Knife, 12 o'clock, you give your, threat and direction and distance. That's a military type of thing. Tank, 500 meters, 4 o'clock, like that kind of stuff. You could do that, that's going to be a little bit of learning. I personally don't care if I'm alerting in public, because if I'm going down that road, this is a safety related issue.
Yeah.
The safety of myself, the people with me who are most likely
Yep.
people I love and care about, or those other innocent people in that next concentric ring around me. So I think that was to your point, George, and it doesn't always have to be cool guy kinetic. I'm doing up drills no. It's like first and foremost, I've got to have the ability to communicate with my family in such a manner that they know that shit just got kind of serious and kind of got a little. Is that a good way of summarizing that?
Oh, absolutely. Like I tell my wife, I'm always trying to look just to see if I see something that's out of the norm to me. If something makes me feel a little uneasy, I'm not looking for a fight. I'm looking for a way out. And guys can sit around and go like, hey, that's a pussy way of looking at it. Well, if that's how you want to look at it. Survival is a good way of looking at it. Is how I am. I'm not by myself. I'm with my wife or I'm with my family. I don't need them around when stray bullets are going because people don't shoot really well or they're not focused enough to do what needs to be done. And it kind of goes with what you were saying earlier, Redbeard. I think training your family for a bad situation, we can't train for everything, but just having hey, I'm not going to be the senior man with a secret. I have no problem telling my wife, hey, look, if you see something happen or you see me draw my gun, if you're near cover, you get where you need to. If you're not, you get behind me and we move. And she already knows, she has a good mindset. Do I think that she would be stellar when something happened? Honestly, I do, because, she's a strong woman.
Yeah.
But if we never talk about stuff like that, it's going to catch somebody off guard. And hell, I'm sure there's something that might catch me off guard for a moment, but I'm hoping that between my training in years of being, somewhat alert, I'm going to react a lot faster and be like, oh shit, what the hell is happening type deal. So I think just that thought process and having a good brain and thinking about stuff, that helps you in the long run of before you even get a gun in your hand, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
So everybody says, you'll rise to the challenge. No, the truth is you will sink down to the highest level of muscle memory / training that you've been able to master. And I think what Triple X just said there, everybody should take to heart. If you've never practiced this and rehearsed this and discussed it, so again, there's verbal rehearsals, right? And then there's physical rehearsals, and then there's field problem rehearsals. But if you're not doing any of that stuff, the first time it happens, you're everybody in your family or your immediate group or whatever, those people that are with you, they're not going to have any idea because you've never even discussed this before. You've never mentioned it, talked about it out loud, having a beer with your buddies. Hey, what would happen if we were at a bar and suddenly this has happened? And on that note, that just happened in the UK. I hate to say it for anybody from the UK watching this. It seems just like you guys are like America, even worse in some areas, where every weekend there's another crazy dude with a giant machete or a knife, who's doing crazy things in downtown London or, Manchester, other, urban centers. And just last week it happened. So to your point, Triple X, a guy's out there stabbing on car windows with a knife. I don't know if those guys had ever talked about it, rehearsed it, but 2 guys responded. You can make an argument that they maybe shouldn't have responded, but that's a separate thing. If you're not going to respond, you're usually watching somebody die, and that somebody could be, you just don't know, right? It's an innocent person.
Right.
If you're going to take action, and some people would say, well, those guys shouldn't have gotten involved, but they did get involved. And though they didn't do a perfect job of it, it did appear as though it was 2 guys who had either been in a couple fights with, more than one person, or they had at least some conversation in the bar. Like, we can't allow this to happen. I'm going to go left. You go right. I'm going high. You're going low. They had some type of plan and rehearsal. And I think to George Triple X, to your point there, that's the point I really like is you got to be talking this through. You've got to have plans. You got to rehearse this stuff. There's no one way necessarily that's going to be the You know, if anyone's looking for a cookie cutter, you know, that's not the case here, because that's not real life. That's not, every situation's gonna be a little bit differently. But the common denominator here so far is you better be thinking it through, and you better be communicating it, and at least doing verbal rehearsals with those people that you love, because it's turning into Mad Max time, right? You know, in our society. Redbeard,
right.
I know you want to kind of keep us on track here, and I know you got some stuff, so I'm going to turn it over to you here, sir.
Yeah, so I just have like one last thing, and I'm kind of going to come back around just to the gear thing just briefly. You know, I've used a couple different types of gear. I have a plate carrier and a helmet and several other things, and I've gotten fairly used to shooting with that. And you know, coming from wearing nothing to changing what I wear, the thickness of the clothes and stuff like that. There's a lot of different variables. But at the same time, you know, and Mark and I have talked about this as well. But you know, really, there's a realm of sustainment. You know, there's a lot of guys that, you know, they like the plate carrier, it looks really sexy, you know, but it's like, at the same time, it's like, is it really the place to start? Because when you evaluate like the gear that you're going to take with you, as Mark and I have mentioned several times, like you also have to consider, like, if you're not out there working with it or training with it, you know, even obviously as an average person, and you're not working out, you're not walking distance, you're not doing stuff with your gear, and you're not testing your gear, you know, like, then you have to understand that unless you can be at a level to where that gear works for you, you're going to kind of be at a point of depreciation, if you will. So I guess my biggest question is, like, if you were to, like, in your opinion, what would be something decent for someone to start with? You know, if they want some type of kit that they can store magazines or something easy and something that you can index to where they can get a start anyways, if you even have a suggestion at all.
So, well, I mean, a kind of like what you said. I mean, for me, I would start off with either a good belt or a good holster.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is, you know, it's great to have plates and stuff like that, but in reality, are you walking around with plates all the time in a plate carrier? Probably not. I think about the plate carriers and helmet and gear like that as being something that, hey, I'm sustaining in my for home defense. Like, hey, something bad's happening and I already know it. And now it's a worst case scenario for me. And now I'm having to move. And then along with that, I'm probably not going to be the only one with a plate carrier. If I am to that point and I have to move my wife or anybody else like that, I'm going to feel like shit if I'm the only one wearing it and she's not. Now, in the aspect of that, though, if I'm the person who's protecting her, then, hey, that would be why, you know, but I would try to give her whatever I could for protection.
Right.
I think if you're going to be having any type of weapons or whatever, anything that's going to sustain those weapons and, you know, like magazines and stuff like that, you know, I talk about the little bags that you can throw over your shoulder.
100%.
You know, but where I can just open it up to small expedition bags that they have. I can put my licky chewies in there, water, magazines, and something that I can throw over my shoulder and move. It's not going to be a lot of weight.
Yeah.
But, you know, things that I can easily move in. Some of the things that we even talk about for guys is, hey, maybe you're not carrying all that stuff, but if something happens, it's somewhere within that vehicle, like underneath your feet, that you can throw it on. It doesn't have to go on perfect. Throw it over your shoulder where, hey, I can grab a magazine if I'm shooting or anything like that. But I think gear that's going to help you, you know, like a great holster, a great belt, like, you know, belts from Centerline System. To me, you know, having something that I know that if I'm in a physical fight with somebody, the belt's going to break. The back of the holster isn't going to break. You know, hey, if I'm carrying an appendix holster, when I go to, you know, slide it down, I don't shoot myself in the dick. You know, little things like that that are going to be very important. That, hey, if I get in a fight and my belt comes apart or my holster breaks, now I'm right back to, hey, have I been training how to fight hand to hand? No. Do I have it in me to take my finger and put it through somebody's fucking eye? Little things like that to crank it up and go, hey, you know what? My internal dial hangs at 85. I get to 100 a lot faster than you. I'm going to win this fight. So I think about the smaller things that are going to sustain something like that. And then if you're into like what you're talking about, hey, I have my plate carriers and stuff like that. If you have it, then there's nothing wrong with working out in it. You know, doing stuff to where, hey, is it getting caught on this as it's here? Or, hey, is this so cumbersome? I can't use this type of holster. So if I do draw my gun, can I even get it out? And testing things like that. I think that's just real important because if you buy something and you get it, you should try it right off the bat. And if it works for you, then hey, that's great. If you realize, hey, this one doesn't work so well for me, send it back and get another one and just work it. If you have older plates because you can't afford to get ceramic plates, know that weight's going to be a little bit more. Now, hey, if I have to go from there to there, can I do it without having a heart attack? And now I'm no longer protecting my family. To me, you got to give something to get something. It's what are you willing to give up to get to that point?
Right. Yeah. I like how you laid that out because that really, I think, strikes at the core of, I think, a lot of people's questions. And Mark, I don't know if you've had a lot of people ask you about gear. I would assume that you probably have over the last, the several years, but it's like a lot of people, they want all of this cool guy stuff because they see like a Delta dude and it's like, okay, but like what are you going to use it for? And are you actually going to train with it, or what are you going to do? And there's a lot of guys stateside that, while they do have a plate carrier, a lot of these guys are like, that's fine, but like a sustainment rig, like an H harness or with loadout stuff, is going to be more applicable for 90% of the situations if you ever get to that point, because you have mobility, you can do a lot more. It's something that you can have more sustainment on versus, like you were saying, plates, or a carrier. There's so many flexible options, and I don't think that there's necessarily a preferred way of doing something for one person and then the rest of everybody's an individual. And so you got to kind of figure out like what makes sense for you and what your individual situation is and what's the environment that you're working in. So I think the way that you stated it is great. And I hope a lot of people can take something away from that. We all start somewhere, and I certainly started in humble beginnings myself.
So just to add to that, for what it's worth for anyone watching or listening, to both Triple X's point and Redbeard's, and I'll try to just keep this, 2 sentences, 3 sentences. But, you don't start off trying to fly the F-35 jet, right? You got to start off in the classroom and then the simulator and all that kind of stuff. I think it's the same thing. So I'm not disparaging anybody who's out there, civilian, prior military. I don't give a shit. If you're out there training with plates and long guns and all that, it's a good cough there, Triple X.
That was solid. Yeah.
But good on that person. However, let's not forget the fundamentals. And I think what Triple X said at the beginning, I just really like, and I want to highlight one more time, is like, hey, at the end of the day, unless this is your occupation, what Triple X is doing, what I used to do, what so many other people are out there doing right now, unless that's your occupation, and unless you think in the realm of probability and consequences, what's the probability of civil war or zombie apocalypse or Red Dawn? Well, you do your own thinking that through. If you think that's a high probability event, well, any one of those events has incredibly high consequences. So you should be training yourself accordingly for that stuff, because the consequences are severe. If the consequences are so severe that you're dead, well, what's the point training? Like a nuclear, you live in an urban area and there's at least 10 different nukes targeted around you where you live. Well, your best bet is hoping that you die in the initial blast and fireball as opposed to radiation sickness, right? So going to what Triple X, do you want to elaborate on that? You see where I'm trying to throw you up a little bit of a softball, because I think you nailed it. It's like, again, you started off with the mindset, and we didn't rehearse this, but you started off with the first thing, right? It's got to be here. And then, like we could sit here and talk about like, just sit here and just do reps and do prep, because if you carry concealed, this is probably what you're going to encounter, first and foremost, not long guns, not, plate carriers. And I'm not the one who's going to sit there and say that as a civilian, you can't have that shit. I'm a civilian now. What do you mean I can't have that shit? But you've got to like, but what do they say? I don't want to poo-poo it. If you've got the time and the money and the resources, get that crap. But you got to start downward. But you got to start where XXX just kind of started off, and it's right here. And then you got to. This is one of those examples where baby steps aren't for babies. You got to start learning. And here's where I'll end up with this. My last comment, and I'll bring it to you, George, because I know this will add to what you've got to say. When I was teaching, so many people just wanted to be fast. I'm like, I kind of want to be accurate. Like, don't you want to be accurate? First be accurate, and then start working on your speed. Timing, there's all kinds of drills. You don't even have to be on the range to start to work on timing drills. But George, go ahead, Redbeard, and then I'm gonna turn it over to you.
I was just gonna say, how many times have you and I been on the phone and you're just like, you're practicing a draw with your handgun, or you're practicing like presentations and mag changes with your rifle. Like, there's been so many phone calls to where I'm just like dilly-dallying or whatever, and I'm just like, I'm just getting to the point to where it's totally automatic, Hey,
don't share too much of our weirdness with the viewers, right? Like, I think we're not supposed to talk about that shit. But
it's off the charts. It's off the charts.
Yeah. All right, Triple X.
You're right, Mark. Yeah,
but
you're right.
As a man who's out there and you're actually professionally training people, who are supposed to be at a certain level or who are operating in different types of environments. I think that's the main thing Redbeard was really trying to say. Is like, you got to take a step back and look at your capabilities, but more importantly, you also got to like look at your operating environment. What really is the highest, the threat you're most likely to face?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we know from being deployed in different areas, everyone has the same, what I would say, thought of, hey, war is war. And I have to say that's not true, because I know when I first met you and I interviewed, just during my normal talk with you, you stopped my interview midway and was like, did you just come from such and such? And I'm like, yeah. And then that just put your mind into another gear, because you already had an understanding that I knew how a certain AO worked, but now we're in a completely different AO. And my mind's already tracking on that. And when I say AO, for people who don't know, that's area of operations. Well, it goes right back to what you guys are saying. Hey, if I live in downtown, whatever city, and there's high crime and everything's going on and people are being mugged and shot or stabbed, then I'm probably going to have a different approach and do whatever. If I live out in the country and do whatever, well, maybe I'm gonna have a different approach to doing everything else that I do out in that area. So having that understanding of what I call situational awareness, or hey, I'm in a certain spot, I'm really not allowed to let my brain calm down a little bit. I'm dressing a little bit differently. Maybe I'm wearing something to where I can easily get to my pistol and I'm even more concealed than what I normally would be. Or, maybe because of this, maybe I have an extra magazine on my belt or inside my pocket that I can get to, because I think, hey, this is a higher probability that, hey, whatever type of weapon I'm carrying, I might need more bullets, but I can't carry a larger weapon. Little things like that where people sit there and go, why are you thinking that? Well, I'm thinking about, again, surviving an encounter. And to follow up on what you were saying, Redbeard, you always, and I tell this to my students, you always hear the thing where everyone says practice makes perfect. And that's bullshit. Because sloppy practice makes for sloppy results. But perfect practice makes permanent, because we're training our subconscious to do the right thing during the worst time of our life. And if it means, hey, high stress situation, maybe I'm trying to get the best draw I can, but my hand is not in the right spot. I didn't get high up on the back strap, but maybe my sights aren't perfect, but they're where they need to be. As long as this is working, something is working. And this is what's causing it. And when I'm talking to guys about that, hey, presentation, they're like, man, your presentation looks so good. And I go, because I do it slow. I bring my support hand to my chest. I'm up. I'm driving. I'm bringing the weapon to my eye. And hell, I still dry fire. I've had a gun in my hand since I was 17 years old in the military. I'm 51. I still have a gun in my hand all the time. And I still practice to where, hey, I'm trying to do the very best I can and keep it ingrained deep in my subconscious that, hey, if something does happen, I'm doing it better than the guy who's trying to do it to me, and I'm coming out on top.
Yeah.
Just a quick little thing, because what you just said, tying into another comment earlier, I had it written it down. You want to get to 100 before the other guy does. Like, and to what you just said, and that's coming from here. That's coming from mental rehearsals, physical rehearsals, just even table talk exercises like we're doing right now. You want to go from 0 to 100 or 0 to 10, however you want to phrase that. You want to get to maximum efficiency, maximum lethality faster than the other guy does, right? Mentally. But then to George's point, but you have to have that muscle memory. So when it does happen, because your brain, so you hear me talk about soda straw. You know, if you've never been in these situations, even if you've never been in a fist fight before, you're going to come into here, you're going to soda straw. You've got to have already so built in that when afterwards you're like, holy shit, I just executed that almost near flawlessly for the first time in my life under duress while somebody was threatening me or my family or whatever the case is. That is not an easy thing to get to. And so back to Redbeard's comment, and this is why I'm bringing this up. So why are some people, and again, I'm not bashing it. I'm just simply questioning, should you be starting off training on plate carriers and long guns and nod, all the other cool guy stuff? Or should you be to your point, having a good belt, a good handgun, and then don't ever forget, you still got to have some hands. You got to have some capabilities, even if you're an old broken ass man like me. Like I'm mentally tweaking what I would do in a non-kinetic situation based on my physical limitations. Dude, I'm here to tell you, I'm little, but it fits so perfectly. This is a quick second side story. I'm not using the Sterl anymore. My surgery is getting way better. And I can actually kind of walk a little bit. It's not pretty, but I'm walking, right? But that cane, like, I'm here to tell you, I want a sword cane. Like, so in other words, like, I'm not going to sit and I could probably grapple with both of you guys still, like, pretty effectively on the ground. But my stand-up game against either of you guys, dude, it just isn't, I'll hold my own for a little bit. But a sword cane or like, again, or an asp baton or that handgun, those are the things that I know, even in my physical state. So going back all the way to what Triple X said at the beginning, it's got to start here. And part of that is checking the ego at the door. And I don't know if you said that, Redbeard, or if Triple X, but I'm picking up what you guys are putting down. I'm liking this a lot.
Just real quick, like there's in this whole kind of bow tie, I guess, like the segment that I wanted to do. There is a certain degree of humility. Like I said earlier, like I started from somewhere. We all do. Mark did, and Triple X did, and the thing of it is like it's always going to be a progressive learning curve, right? So like I didn't get good at hiking by just going out one day and deciding I was going to hike 20 miles. I mean, I've hiked 20 miles with a rock on my back, and the thing of it is like, you don't get there overnight. You get there over time, building up an endurance and a duration. And the same thing with, fieldcraft, or the same thing with like drawing a weapon in presenting that weapon, and I guess it's okay to not be the high speed guy right away. Slow it down, progressively become more efficient and proficient with your movements, and just don't sit there and fixate always on what somebody else is doing. Focus on what you're doing, and then find areas of correction. Now, if what somebody's doing helps you find that correction, more power to you. The only other thing that I'm going to say,
finish. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like I've heard a lot of people kind of say this, but it's like, look, if you can get a good belt, a decent or good handgun, and one operational rifle, and you train on those two things with that belt in like a mag pouch or two, you're going to be light years ahead of a guy who has 16 rifles and 24 handguns, because chances are you're investing your time and your money into two platforms more attentively than the guy who has a Gucci'd out, 6 Gucci'd out ARs and 16 Gucci'd out Glocks. Like, be cognizant of where you're putting your time and money, and I promise you, you're gonna be a more effective person. And again, I can't stress it enough. Just take your time and go through the basics, like both these guys have said, because it'll pay off in the end. So,
Hey, Triple X, can we get you for maybe another 15 minutes or so? Are you good for that? How much time you got?
I have 17 minutes.
Okay. All right. So that 15 is yes. So bringing it over to you to respond to Jeremy. But what Jeremy said that made me think of one of your previous comments was sloppy fast. You did that whole, and I loved it. I'd never heard it said that way before. I mean, I knew what you meant, but can you say that whole thing again about hey, you're fast, but you're sloppy, or you're training, but because I think that tied in with what Redbeard just said, and that's worth repeating one more time.
Yeah. I mean, as we talk about, when people don't have that foundation, and I even take this back to sports, you don't see wide receivers just start from 0 and go to 100 and learn a route. They sit there and they jog it slowly. They go, hey, I'm going 9, I'm going this, I'm going that, I'm whatever route it's going to be. They're training themselves how to do that route and do it perfectly. Now, they're sitting there calculating, they're counting, they're doing everything that they should do because it needs to be second nature to them. If they just go out and just do it as fast as they can, they're never going to count. They're never going to be as crisp as you see these guys do. And it's one thing that we talk about with people who are shooting. I don't like the I don't like the term smooth as fast. Fast is fast. But how do you get there? When you get there by doing repetitions, slow repetitions. I'm practicing and I'm getting the perfect draw every single time. Well, how do I get the perfect draw? I got to start off slow. Whether it's, I'm standing here with my hands up because, I tell people the moment you see a threat coming to you or you feel a threat coming to you, you shouldn't be with your hands down. It should be like, hey, I don't want any problems. I'm already calculating how I'm getting out of this. And I even kind of go with the movie Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr. When he's getting ready to get into a fight, he's already projecting what he's going to do to the bad guy. I tell people, I'm not here to fight you. I'm not here looking for a fight. I like being that gray man. I like people see and look at it like, what is that dude going to do? My wife laughs because she's like, oh, I know what he's going to do. But I don't care. This isn't a dick measuring contest for me when I walk into a bar or do anything. I'm there to have a good time, or go into a restaurant and have a good time. But I believe the good Lord has blessed me with great skills to go, hey, if something bad does happen, I'm putting my money on you to win. So with that, I know a high stress situation, by the time I even realize it, I'm already going to have my weapon out. It's not going to have to be me sitting there going, okay, I went down, or if I'd never practiced, then next thing you know, I come out. We always tell everyone weapon to the eye. Well, if you ever seen anyone draw really fast and just draw real fast and not to practice, their weapon maybe doesn't reach all the way up, or they're all over, and every time they're shooting the hand, it's going everywhere. It's just like, okay, is this the first time you've ever touched a weapon? And it's one of the reasons why I kind of get very critical on law enforcement officers when I see these videos is, every time I put my uniform on, I would dry fire 10 times. No magazine or anything in. And then once I loaded, I would conduct a tactical reload just to, hey, take one magazine out, put another magazine in, and put it just to tell my head, hey, you know what? If shit goes south, this is what you got to do. And, you know, there were times when, you know, my wife would look at me like, why are you doing that? I'm like, game time. I'm putting on this uniform. It's, you know, if some people hear this, are like, oh, there he goes. Another cop wanted to go out and kill anybody. It's like, no, but I never worked in the nice place of any county or city I ever worked in. They're like, hey, you're not afraid to get out of your car. You're not afraid to deal with drug dealers. You're not afraid to deal with gangbangers. And it's just because I would say, a different approach coming up to people.
Yeah.
I treat people with respect. I mean, even drug dealers, you know, they're out there trying to make a living, but they know if I'm on my A game and they're not on their A game, they're going to jail. If they were on their A game and I wasn't, hey man, good on you tonight. But there was
just
a
on
respect.
But just to take it a little bit away from like the drug, the law enforcement side, but like evil predators, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
You're, you know, if you're a hard target, I mean, evil, a predator, like a lone wolf doesn't attack, you know, a grizzly bear, you know, like unless the grizzly bear is broken or old or, you know, or somehow screwing something up. That's a bad analogy, but bringing it to what you just said there, George, like criminal elements are predators. They're looking for that weak link, you know, that amongst the herd, so to speak. So, and I'm just going to throw myself under the bus. So I still do some of what George just said, but that was a great, just, you know, here, I'll check my ego at the door. I need to do more of that. So every day when I leave my setting to go out into the environment, George, to your point, I'm still doing a couple little mag things. I'm racking. I'm doing a couple presses. I'm doing a few draws just as I'm getting my shit ready because I'm walking out the door and I'm no longer in this environment. And I don't know, like, so I don't control everything but I can kind of control this environment a little bit. But the moment I step out, my control then only comes to what I do in my vehicle or in my personal space, so to speak. So you have to get yourself mentally, again, that's just like you're about to go out the wire. So to use that analogy, you're leaving the wire and you've got to be prepared for whatever might come in. And you don't get to pick and choose when that happens, unless you're the one out there, you know, creating the chaos and the confusion or doing the evil.
Well, I mean, you look at it in the small aspect, and I know people don't realize it, but I like utilizing sports because they're professionals. Well, what are we? What do you see before a baseball game? Batting practice, fielding practice. They're doing everything to prepare themselves to be at their highest level in an hour. Well, if you do that before you leave and you do it safe, you're preparing yourself for the possibility of being in that most dangerous situation you've ever been in your life, and you want to be prepared.
Right.
There it is. Be prepared. We're at an hour and 7. We're trying to keep these subject matter expert, you know, SMEs to about an hour. This is our first time with George, and I know we're really bumping up against your no later than time. I want to give Redbeard, if you got a question, well, if we don't have enough time, I'm not joking. I really, just for the sake of people who are watching this on video, if you're listening to this, the next segment will be kind of lost on you a little bit. But Jeremy, with your permission, I don't think we're going to get to BCP's Better Call Paul. We're not going to do his question. I think we'll save that for bringing Triple X on another time. But I kind of want to throw Triple X under the bus with a special slideshow presentation. Can I do that now? All right. So here we go. So for those watching, that isn't that sweet. I mean, just look at that right there. I'm here to tell you, he fucked with me so many times when I never took a lot of pictures because you're not really supposed to, you know, but like him and some of the other guys did. And of course, George, just being who he is, he had to ham it up there and fuck with me. That's actually the easiest of them. Now, here's George in another scenario. This is how we actually had to make coffee. So again, when you start thinking about the mindset and shit like this, I mean, look at it. We didn't give up. We all wanted coffee. Do you not see? The coffee machine didn't work. We had to boil the water in a different pot and then pour it through the strainer. That's George and another smart ass, I guess, kind of getting the morning going there. Oh, that's one of my favorites. Dude, like, I don't know if you were like, I can't remember if that was my camera or somebody else's, but and you
No,
grabbed
it was your camera.
yeah. And then I come home to the States and I develop it and I find that picture. Like, so that was awesome. And that's in a completely separate spot now, where I'm with
Yeah.
George. Now and again in a different spot. But so there's breakfast, right? You know, be prepared, like get ready, you know, look at us. It's all in the morning. Every one of us has a handgun. You know, like you might not be able to see it from that angle. Everybody's armed, everybody's getting the, you know, whatever, you know, we're on a little thing, but that just shows you a little bit of what the life is like, you know, I don't remember how many months we lived in that thing. You know, honestly, we lived in that for a long time.
Yes, we did.
And to the point you're saying, as we were there more and being prepared more, I don't know if you want to tell a quick little story about our internal PT program just in our small little compound. I mean, the shit we're doing. I mean, so our life, we did have long guns and tons of ammo and all this other stuff and vehicles and plate carriers, but we didn't just sit. We actually did PT that prepared us for what we would have to do outside of the wire in the real world, wearing all that gear and shit. That was actually a pretty cool time of life right there. And then the other side of it, that's us doing laundry. No shit. That's me and George XXX doing laundry. One was the wash bin and the other was the rinse bin, because apparently no one gave a shit about us. All right. Here's XXX just being XXX. You know, you got some pretty good dance moves, buddy. I'm not going to lie.
Thank you.
Pretty good dance moves. Here he is giving me a hard time. Now, behind the scenes, there was a typhoon. I'm not joking. A typhoon that a rainstorm that went through in a place where there's hardly ever any rain. And George and some of the other guys had just fought back the elements and prevented our tent from collapsing. And I'm just still sitting in my bunk because I'm the boss, and that's what bosses do. And George is saying, "Would you like some coffee, you lazy son of a bitch?" You know, type of thing. So,
that was a really bad night, because the only thing that stayed up was that center pole in that fucking tent.
Yeah. I can't show some of the other pictures because there's just too much personal data in there. This is one of my favorites. So if you think that the military and the CIA and everybody's got their shit together, I had requested eye protection, right? So when you're shooting or you're out doing tactical stuff, you really want to have some eye pro, right? Because there's just like dust and rocks and, you know, the back splatter and shit from your M4 or whatever. Yeah, if you look at that picture, that is a no shit. So that's not a knee pad. That's the case for the no shit. Those, I think those are really Gucci, or they're
Gucci.
Yeah, those are real Gucci sunglasses that our people sent. When I requested eye protection, we're the guys out on the front lines. They sent us a bunch of that shit. So of course we had to do a photo op, and of course XXX has to be our model for that. So, and then George, we'll end it on this. Do you want to tell people, because that's a good story? I think that goes. That story ties into so much of what we're talking about here tonight, though, on the mindset and the attitude and how just to get stuff done, and also go into the never quit, right? And for those of you who aren't able to watch this, I'm showing you the picture of an outhouse that is full of some just disgusting vomit. And I'm going to move on past that slide because that's pretty gross. And that's my slideshow. George, I got to give you any final comment on the slideshow.
Bravo, gents, by the way.
I look great.
And that takes the cake. That was worth the entire hour that we've been here.
He's like, hey, younger George was pretty sexy. I kind of like
I think, I mean, as you well know, we were in a not so great spot in the world, and we made the best out of it. And I think having the thought process and the determination, as you said, hey, we're going to do some great things, and we're going to do our very best to make a dent in this, war on terror. That was a great driving point to where, hey, it didn't matter of, the living conditions when we first got there, and or, traveling, having that, travel light freeze at night, because I still remember waking up and punching in the air because I was using that small poncho over my face and suffocated myself. And then after I got about 20 minutes of sleep, you were kicking my rack and telling me, "Hey, hobo, get the fuck up. We got to go." Those are great memories of, us making a difference in saving American lives and doing wonderful things. And just having the right people, in that spot doing it. And building off of that, in reality, that helps, I think, build your character when hey, you can be in some of the worst spots in the world and still have fun. When you're in a great spot, it makes you appreciate it a little bit more.
And I think when you have, and you didn't address that last photo, and maybe it's better that you didn't, but my only other addition to that is, and having great people with the same, everybody, we didn't think the same. That's not what I'm saying, but the mindset that we're like, the mindset was like, I'm going to kick this in the ass no matter what is thrown at me. Right. And, you're just seeing some little stupid snapshots, and everybody, and if I could pick, like, I have to pick 5 people on my team. One of the people is going to be somebody, and I don't mean like George George actually has a lot of skill, but I want somebody who has some skill, but I'm going to pick one person who's got that ability to make everybody laugh and realize that 100%. This isn't the end of the world, because that shit's really important. And that's what that last slide was supposed to empower, but you didn't take the bait on that one.
Well, look, here's the deal. That last slide was a picture I had to take with that freaking captain, because also inside of that was the results of someone having good alone time in there. So they threw up in a different way, and then the other person came in and threw up a complete different way. And that's the only way we got our own porta-johns inside of our compound. So yeah, that was a great tour to just get that stuff.
Yeah, no. And well, I'll give the background, and then we'll turn it over to Jeremy. We'll give Triple X final comments, and we'll turn it over to Jeremy for outro. But no one wanted to provide that. So we're a compound within a compound in a shithole where people, mortar. It's one of the, that stuff is still going on even at that time in the war. And we had to go out there, and George just did the heavy lifting and carried the water. And this is what makes, again, it's a mindset issue. All right, how do we? I'm not giving up. We have to do something about this. This is both from a field hygiene and from a safety and a sanitary perspective. Mm-hmm. This is a threat. Well, okay. How many porta-johns are there in this little area? Blank. How many people come through and transit this area every day? Blank. Do the math. All right. They're da-da-da-da-da. All right. Because we weren't even getting shit paper. It was, but you had to, like, figure out how to, like, oh, here's a problem. I'm not just going to give up. I think that's the thing I like about that photo. It's gross and disgusting, but it points out, like, okay, don't give up. We had to elevate that. I actually sent that picture up through my chain of command, and then we got results, because people were like, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, then you come down here for a week, and this is the conditions you'll live in. And you tell me, boom, next aircraft down, porta-johns.
Nobody wanted that.
This guy right here. All right. Final comments there, Triple X. I just got to tell you real quickly, thank you so much for,
dude.
I know it's super. Yeah, you're just a great man, a solid American, good human being. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to 100%. Share your background and your thoughts and your experience. We got to have you back on to do this in a little bit, where we can ask some more pointed questions, and because.
Yep.
But hopefully this is a good, just an initial breach into the, you got to get out there and you got to start doing some stuff, and you got to start taking it seriously. And that doesn't mean you have to be doing plate carriers or nods. You probably should be starting down here, shway, as they like to say in a different part of the world. Slow it down. Slow. Final comments there, Triple X.
I just wanted to say thank you for having me on. Great questions. I think it's a great foundation. I'm looking forward to coming back.
And we're looking forward to having you back.
I anticipated some smartassery from you on that. That was just too.
Look, I'm going to let you have your moment, because I know you're getting older and you're probably going to forget that this moment even happened. So then when I come back, it'll be okay.
Hey, do not inflame his autism, George. Do not do it.
Well, actually, I just took that as the veiled threat it was. George was saying, I'm going to come back and I'm going to rampage on your ass next time when it's not, 4 a.m. my time. So on that note, thank you from my perspective for everybody who's watched, listening to this video. Again, huge thanks to all the great men and women who've come on the podcast tonight. We bring you George, aka Triple X, rock solid American who, if he lives in your community, you're just damn lucky to have him and his folks around you. So thank you again, sir. I really do mean that. And I appreciate
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
So let's have Redbeard take us on out, sir. And then we'll wrap this up here tonight.
Yeah. I just want to say something real quick, there's, Mark and George have both mentioned, it's good to have some levity, not only in the good times, but especially the rough times, because that's a huge deal. And, as somebody who grew up as Catholic and is still embracing my Catholic Christian values and stuff like that, I often think about, something that I was told, which is don't only pray when things are good, or don't only pray when things are bad. You should be praying during all times and being grateful. And if you need help, in the good times, ask for help. You have to be doing this in all times. And I think about, the morale boost and having that one guy who's just a character, it's like, you've got to have that levity in both the bad and the good times, because it's like, look, it fortifies your spirit. It really does. And it keeps you moving forward. And I can't express that enough. Like, that was such a great point that both of you hit on. And I think that's a really good takeaway for the evening. So, but look, on that point, Mark already knows where I'm going with this. The flame of liberty shall not and will not ever be extinguished so long as there are good people that are willing to support and defend it. And that means each and every single one of you. It takes every single person to have their head in the game, to actively better yourself, and to find a way that you can add a positive barrier in your community, and being the change that you seek and the change that you want. Because in the end of the day, we're all capable of doing it. We just have to get out there, and we have to learn and educate ourselves and take what we learn and apply it. So on that, I really want to thank everybody for coming and watching the podcast. Thank you, George, for coming on the podcast. I know it's late for you. And thank every single person who really has come on this podcast. I can't express that enough. Mark and I are truly grateful for this. And we look forward to having all of you guys back. And we look forward to having our viewers back for the next one as well.
All right, everybody.
Awesome.
Be good, right?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
We'll
Take
see you on
care.
the next podcast. All right, everybody. Be safe.
I'll talk to you guys later.
Cheers.